some really that restless? Republicans like Donald Trump keep saying America is weak and its best days behind it, but do young people agree with that sentiment? Luntz Global Partners and Snapchat, they just surveyed the so-called Snapchat generation, and they found millennials are actually high on America's future, but low when it comes to Trump, as well as other Republicans in the field. David Merrit, he's kind enough to join us. He's managing director at Luntz's Global Partners. And David, I got to tell you, the findings of this I thought were fascinating, upending a lot of assumptions, at least that I had, about where 18 to 26-year-olds really find themselves.
Yeah, it was a surprising survey. There was much more optimism out there than we expected, especially when you see the likes of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, who are really succeeding in the polls because they are railing against Washington, railing against Wall Street. But personally, a lot of young Americans do think the country is on the right track. In fact, 76% say they're on the right track, which is interesting because their parents think that the country's on the wrong track. So there definitely is a tension between the generations.
And it's not close. The disparity between where mom and dad think their kids' generation's going for where the kids' generation's going, I mean, they're polar opposites when you look at the math. But since we are in the political season, let's look there. First off, we'll get to who they're leaning towards and strongly, but they say they're committed and they're going to vote and they're very passionate. So what we may have thought was an outlier 8 years ago with Obama, we might see it again in November, right? That these kids are going to turn out in big numbers.
Absolutely. We were astounded by the turnout numbers. In fact, 87% said that they are planning to vote, which is far ahead of where other generations are. I think what you'd actually find is that they are enthused, they're engaged, they're really taken with folks like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump because they are energizing really the entire country. But these young people are very dedicated to public service. They want their politicians to have a social mission. Income inequality is a huge issue for these voters, and they see a candidate in Bernie Sanders who actually can reflect that engagement and want to move the needle on income inequality.
You know, I thought it was telling, David, the most despised vocation, they put bankers. So this idea of the 1% and railing against and the system's gaming against at least people on the bottom or middle of it, do you think that translates into, let's say Sanders fades, as most people believe he does, that then is a default Democrat vote? Because nobody did well of the Republican candidates.
Right. Well, I would say the bottom line of this survey is that this is the most left-leaning generation we've seen since the 1960s. You know, there's an adage that says if at 20 you're not a liberal, you have no heart. If at 40 you're not a conservative, you have no brain. Well, we didn't poll 40-year-olds in the surveys, but we polled a lot of 20-year-olds, and they love Bernie Sanders. They love his message. They love what he's talking about because he's taking on Wall Street. He's taking on corporate America. He's taking on the big banks. And they actually see socialism as being the most compassionate economic system to take care of citizens. 58% agree that socialism beats capitalism as the most compassionate system, which is astounding. So that's why you see the likes of folks like Bernie Sanders and even Hillary Clinton trying to move further left to catch up with Bernie. It's resonating with young Americans, clearly.
Sounds good in theory until they get in the real world of the socialism. But be that as it may, David, what I also thought was, I don't know if it's troubling, but it certainly is eye-opening, how they get their information. I mean, yes, Snapchat I know was involved in the project, but they're not getting it from shows like this or anything else. It is all through social media, and as we know, verification be damned, whoever's sending out the latest thing, facts be damned often. That's pretty telling as to how they're getting their information and that they're planning to vote.
Absolutely. Well, social media is king. Online media is king. Traditional media really is a dying breed. I'm sorry to say, Richard, but if you have a website, you're in good luck. You're in luck here. They actually find more information, and they go on to verify information as well. So if they see a link from a friend, they see an opinion from a friend, they actually go online to find more information so they can become more informed and more engaged voters. We've actually done work with other technology companies that show this trend as well. Google actually actually has a huge research project underway on how voters of all ages are using online technologies. And actually, the young people use it more so, but even older generations and older voters are going online in droves because that's the most unbiased information they'll find.
Fascinating stuff. Hey, David, I really appreciate a couple. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, Jonathan, I know you do some work with the Bernie Sanders campaign, right? The youth, where people kind of mocked it, they represented big numbers in New Hampshire, even in Iowa in some of the turnout. We don't have time for all the whys and everything else, but when the #1 most hated job for this population is bankers, that's the worst thing you could do, and they can relate more to socialism than as it relates to capitalism. It's not just, oh, they're kids. This is a really hyper-progressive population, as much as any people can remember, for this 18 to 26 area,
and
right?
many of which were affected by what the greed on Wall Street did. They saw their dad lose their job, their mother gets screwed, not have a pension, having to work longer, all these types of things.
Foreclosures, yeah.
Right, I mean, piling, coming out of college with so much debt and everything, and not getting the type of job they want initially because it's just so crazy out there and everybody's fighting with one another. I mean, there's just so much of that going on that they are sick and tired of it, and they see Bernie as somebody that, whether he wins or loses, the most electable or not, it's not something they care about. We care about that because that's what we do. They believe in what he's saying. It's really resonating, and like they're contributing. They're doing everything on social media. They're obviously coming out and voting in droves, and it'll continue. It's amazing.
Really interesting. Andrew, it scares me a lot. We always talk about the low information voter and everything else. When a population is getting all of its news, not just some of it news and coloring it through just social media, self-selective things, and we talk about there's no verifications and anyone can say anything anywhere. It's a little troubling. You can't unwind the clock. It is what it is, but it is a little troubling by what people, and we have these conversations, all of us, with people, and you'll hear some of the craziest things coming out of their mouths that they believe to be are true that aren't remotely out there. That's becoming the new normal, especially for the generation coming up.
And we've been seeing that in different forms and fashions over the last 20 years. I mean, whether it's conservative radio or Fox News or MSNBC or now social media, where you can really pick and choose the slant that you want to listen to. Yeah, it is a little disconcerting, unless, of course, the voters you're talking about are the ones on your side, in which case you're happy that they're in this feedback loop of information because they're going to vote the way that you want it to. One word of caution. In 2012, the under 29 vote was 19% of the vote. In 2008, it was 18% of the vote. Let's say it's up to 20% this year. That's a significant amount of the electorate, but it's not enough to make or break the election. In all likelihood, they split 60-40 for Obama over Romney.
This is not. But the numbers show, at least right now, they're far more on the progressive side than on the conservative side. The youth vote at the moment, it always tends to lean that way, but especially now. Dominic, the one thing that surprised me is they're optimistic about what the future holds. Even though I saw another number, they're not dying to work 8-hour work weeks. But nonetheless, mom and dad got a different idea what the future holds than the kids. And while we say, oh, that's always the way, the guys doing this poll said never as much as this. The optimism was startling to them as to how good they think the future is going to look for them.
It's very interesting because I can't imagine it being any higher than what it was when Obama came into office. Young people across all demographics. But let's take the positive out of this. It's a good thing when young people care and are involved. Don't give me that look.
I am. Hey. No, it's just you being Captain Sunshine, which is throwing me for a loop. All right. I'll let you go off with an afterglow into the break here, Dominic. All right. Coming up next, two very good debates. This hidden camera video of a charter school teacher berating a first grader gone viral, and it's fueling the charter school versus public school debate. We'll get into that.